Well, it looks like it's 10 o'clock, everybody. Hi, I'm Victoria Compton from the San Juan County Economic Development Council. Thank you, everybody who came today to join us to learn more about various programs and news for businesses. I am going to quickly hand the mic over to Suzanne Dale Esty. She is the Executive Director of the Washington Economic Development Association, which is an organization which works statewide to serve businesses like the EDCs do for our individual counties. She's been working hard with our local legislators and our local businesses, and she's going to give us a quick update about what she's seeing at the state level. Suzanne, are you there?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello. How are you? Thank you for joining us today.
You are so welcome. Do you want me to jump right in or?
Jump right in.
do you mind if we do, would it be too hard, or maybe you can just paint the picture, Victoria, who is in the room, if you will?
Yes. So we've got some people who are in the know in terms of various programs. We've got John Gomez from our office, Mickey Von Dasso from our office, Chris Reed, who is our local SCORE counselor, who's been counseling a lot of our clients, Steve Hushebeck from the town of Friday Harbor. Let me just look at the list here. Deborah Hoskinson from the Visitors Bureau, and then some small business owners.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you all. As Victoria may have mentioned, my name is Suzanne Dale Esty, and I am the Executive Director of WEDA, which is not a well-known nonprofit. We're really kind of a behind-the-scenes trade association for economic developers across the state. So my job is really to support Victoria and really all of you, but mostly the people who show up to work each day, whether it's in their living room or in an office, focused on economic development. So it's really a trade association focused on business retention, expansion, and recruitment. And as we say, jobs, jobs, jobs. And obviously, this is a critical time. And for those of you that own small businesses, I own my own. So I'm just a part-time consultant for WEDA. And I'm frankly doing a lot of this COVID-related work pro bono just because I care and it matters. This is just a crucial time for us to be relevant and working together and supporting each of you. So I hope you're hanging in to kind of acknowledge the crisis of the moment. I think we're all exhausted and catching curveballs, whether it's at home or at work or in trying to get through on the phone to a government agency. And I just really appreciate your willingness to think beyond your personal crisis and toward your community. Just a few more things about WEDA and kind of what's happening statewide, and then I'm happy to take questions, Victoria, if that's okay. And just to level set a little bit more about WEDA, we've been around for 25 years. It's really organizationally driven, so it's mostly the economic development councils, and there are 35 of those across the state. They are really the only public-private partnerships that leverage a partnership with the state, but also local resources to focus on growing jobs. And then we have ports and tribes, workforce development professionals. It's relatively small. We have about 110 organizations, but I think this crisis has illustrated why this work matters. And we have a lot of momentum at helping people understand why jobs and economic development matter. So our main role through the COVID crisis has been to be kind of a clearinghouse of ideas and best practices. A lot of what we do is advocacy. So we have a legislative agenda, and I could talk about it, I won't right now, but the fundamentals of the fact that we need this ecosystem of people like Victoria supporting each of you and helping your community be innovative through this. We need more resources. It's really clear with the Small Business Administration at the federal level, with even from a worker standpoint and business standpoint, the lack of resources at the Employment Security Department. I think this crisis has illustrated why that ecosystem is really essential. So we talk about the ecosystem, the toolbox. We have very limited tools in this state, but we're talking about and leveraging the few that we have. And making sure that prosperity is shared so that we're recognizing that there are more remote parts of our state and rural parts of our state, pockets of poverty in our urban counties that haven't shared in the incredible prosperity that we had as recently, it's kind of stunning to think about, as 6 weeks ago. It's just really incredible. I will say that San Juan has been a best practice in everything we're doing. If we have this toolbox, an economic resiliency toolbox, and in almost every folder, it's a Google Doc that economic developers are using across the state. In almost every folder, there's an example of something happening in San Juan. And just to roll it off, you all know, but your Islanders work, the letter to businesses. I just went back and looked. The board statement of the EDC on tenants' rights, your Island Strong campaign, your surveys. Victoria has sent me really cool Google data about how we're doing at the stay-at-home order, your chat and choose. I mean, there's just some really cool things you all are doing. I didn't get on this call to butter your bread, really, but I want to make sure you know that that people across the state are looking at what you're doing, and it's making a difference that Victoria and all of you are willing to share and collaborate and talk about innovation. This is not a time for any of us. And my background is I was the president and CEO of the Seattle-King County Economic Development Council with a board of 70 and an inordinate amount of turf politics. I was the economic development director for 6 years at the city of Renton through the Great Recession. So I've seen how political economic development can be, and this is just not a time for turf or sort of us versus them. It is a time for us to be nimble and responsive. And from what I can tell, and I'm sure there's been some bumps in the road, your community is just doing an incredible job at that. Really quickly on the state front, we had a relatively successful state legislative session. There were a couple of bills we didn't get passed that we wanted to, but it's hard to believe that that was less than a month ago that the session adjourned. But one of the successes, if you will, of the session was that we got a $3 million increase in the Governor's Strategic Reserve Fund. And that originally was delineated in state law to be targeted toward COVID recovery. Ultimately, the legislature didn't target it, but now that 3 million plus an additional 2 million that we would have otherwise used for kind of traditional economic development and recruitment, that has been put into a pot, as you probably know, that was rolled out yesterday as the state's Working Washington Emergency Small Business Grant Program. And just to double check, Victoria, there's no reporters on the call, right? No? I just want to paint the picture of how oversubscribed that grant program is, but I'm asking you to not tweet this out or publish it. In just the very first day, since the governor rolled it out at 1 o'clock, and then the news kind of hit at 1:30, we have more than spent that $5 million across the state. So in King County, for example, where you can imagine in my own business district, that's walkable for us, all the businesses, maybe, minus a few restaurants that are trying to hang on, are boarded up. So they've had nearly 3,000 applications in their first day. And the state had estimated that the economic development councils who are receiving all these applications should receive, and then we would reward less than 2,000. So that's just in King County. The scale of need, and this is businesses 10 employees or less, it's just staggering. And we've never seen anything like this. So part of our advocacy, of course, will be to try to get more resources for similar programs. There'll probably be some ways that we want to tweak it. We don't typically do federal advocacy, but I think given the times and how important these federal tools have been, we're weighing in a little bit. I was texting with Congressman Kilmer last night. Congress could, as early as this week, they're officially scheduled to convene on the 20th, but they could feasibly pursue, and there was a really good story on NPR if you want to just kind of get the lay of the land. You can see it on their website. they could pursue an emergency relief package as early as this week. There's some back and forth. Senate Republicans put forward a proposal, Senator McConnell, of an additional $250 billion for the PPP program you might be familiar with. And the Democrats, Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer, are talking about doubling that and doing even more. And what they're phrasing is more of an interim emergency measure. I think the Speaker has realized that although we want to invest in infrastructure, and I think that will be part of a future stimulus package, that there's still families and businesses in crisis, and we need to still be in a relief and response mode. And frankly, it's sad, but we're not really ready to be talking. We're developing some ideas, but talking much about recovery. I think we need to be, but for the purposes of this next congressional package, it will likely still be a relief measure. And then they'll be talking about a CARES 2 is what they're terming it. So I could get into more of those details about what's being talked about at the federal level. We don't have a federal lobbyist, but I have several years of experience in DC, so I'm dabbling in it, in part because I think we just need more resources. So I think with that, I just want to, again, thank you for everything you're doing. I'm happy to take questions and ideas. We're just a little nonprofit, but we're trying to help all of you, you know, respond and get through and move toward recovery in this extraordinary time.
Thanks, Suzanne. For the people on the call who aren't familiar with the program that Suzanne was talking about, there is currently if you go to our Facebook page, you can actually see this. There's currently a grant of up to $10,000 for businesses in Washington State of up to 10 employees. It's extremely competitive. And so I highly recommend looking into it with the knowledge that it's super competitive. Thank you, Suzanne. It's great to hear from you.
You bet. Do you want me to take a question or two?
Yeah, that'd be great. Do we have any questions for Suzanne?
The chat, I'm still adapting to all of this, but oh, I see that's just Mickey saying people can unmute themselves.
Yes. Okay, good. Well, if you do have questions that you think of afterwards, send me an email to info@sanjuansedc.org and we can answer it offline. Thanks, Suzanne. Okay.
Welcome.
Steve Hushebeck, do you want to do a quick 5-minute rundown of the Town of Friday Harbor programs that are now available?
Certainly can, and the status of the town. I'm a part of the Town Council of the Town of Friday Harbor, and I'll talk about some things on a much more micro level here, but we're experiencing the same things that everybody else on a national level is here on a much smaller basis, but it's just as critical. So we're scrambling and working to help out as many people as we can. First of all, the town is pretty well status quo at this point, at least for now. Employees are at full speed, servicing the town needs like, you know, water, sewer, garbage, and other activities that they would normally do, although in a safer manner. You know, they're starting to wear their masks and they're practicing social distancing, and it's going pretty well from that standpoint. Most town staff are working from home, with a few staying at town hall for critical needs and community service as needed. The town council is meeting on a more frequent basis as needed to address needs. Just as a point of that, the town of Friday Harbor has enacted a civil emergency and the emergency powers in order to circumvent some of the normal required, you know, government regulations, like having to bid jobs out. It gives the town administrator, Duncan Wilson, a lot more flexibility, and the mayor more flexibility to do more immediate things quicker without following some of the guidelines. So it's not that this is not a nationwide emergency. There's nothing specific in the town. You know, the county of San Juan County itself has 10 COVID cases. And I think the majority of those are on Orcas Island. I think there's 3 here in San Juan County, and they're all recovering at home. So we're following that pretty closely as well. We're concerned, the town of Friday Harbor is concerned about the obvious lack of sales tax revenue and lodging tax revenue that's being generated right now, which is close to nothing. Although, because of the increase in online activity, we're still enjoying some of that sales tax revenue, but it's going to be a rocky road for the next few months. We do have a very strong reserve, emergency funds that have been tucked away over the good times the last few years, and we feel good about that. We're just looking forward to a quick recovery so we can get back to normal times. Some of the projects that the town is engaged in, construction projects, road improvements, some of those are being delayed until we can see more light at the end of the tunnel. But other projects that have already been funded through state grants and state programs like the Transportation Improvement Board and so forth, we're going to move ahead with, because a lot of that has already been funded. So that's some of those are moving ahead, but some will be delayed. Programs that the town has enacted for the community here, with what resources we do have, is that we have a program called the Harbor Life Ring program, whereas you can kick in additional dollars on your monthly utility bill that will go towards our Family Resource Center here in Friday Harbor, as well as the food bank on San Juan Island. The town will match up to $5,000 for any amount that comes in as donations on top of residents' normal utility bills. And Kings Market, Valmark, our local grocery operator here, has also matched that $5,000, up to $5,000. So we have that enacted. We have a deferred utility payment. We typically don't send out notices or shutoffs until they're 50 days late. We've increased that to 80 days late and communicated to the community that if you have additional needs, contact the town individually, and we will work with anybody who needs additional help at this point in time. We've the existing employees in town, which is about 35 people, we've actually given them an additional stipend for the next 30 days to spend money within the community at the restaurant takeout and other needs to support the local businesses here in the community. And the town will reimburse town employees up to $20 a day. Of course, they have to submit evidence and receipts of their expenditures, but it's the little part that we can do with our small town to to help the town community. That's pretty much my update for the town of Friday Harbor. Any questions?
Great, thank you, Steve.
Could I ask Steve a question?
Yeah, of course.
So Steve, I know we're still in crisis mode, but is there any planning at the town level for what recovery might feel like? We're seeing some indications that overall infection levels and hospitalizations will be descending rapidly through May. What might it feel when we come out the other end? Do you have any sense for that? And whether I doubt very much it'll be all of a sudden the doors are open. Is there some kind of rolling kind of opening you're anticipating? Any kind of health kind of checks of people coming in and off the islands, et cetera? Just any insight you have into what that's going to feel like.
A lot of that's being managed by the county health department, and of course there's a lot of the business shutdowns are pretty much a state mandate, so we're just going to have to follow those guidelines. I think you're going to have a very resilient response here in this community with people helping each other out and getting out and spending money and doing normal things. It's going to be at arm's length though for a period of time, people are going to continue to practice social distancing even when the doors start to open. So we've had brief discussions about how long is this going to take, and I've heard a lot of opinions from a lot of different levels, but it's probably going to take close to a year before things really get back to normal. But we're very much looking forward to having the controls lifted and giving people flexibility to get out there and do things. But it's going to be cautious to start. So it's not a very definitive answer, but that's kind of been our internal discussions, at least at this point.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I'm going to quickly run through some of the things that the EDC is offering in case you haven't seen the news on those. I just mentioned the commerce grants. If you go to the Department of Commerce website, you will be able to drill down and find those, or you can go to our Facebook page, and that grant is on our Facebook page and on our website. I imagine that all of you have heard about the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL or EIDL loan, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Both of those are available to small businesses. It takes about 10 minutes to apply for the EIDL loan, and it's well worth it. The max is $10,000 on that forgivable part of that EIDL loan. We learned today that it is $1,000 per employee. It is open to owner operators and sole proprietorships without employees. So check into either the EDC website. We've got links to all the pages that you need for that, or the SBA site. The Paycheck Protection Program, the funds for that are limited, but they are expanding them. Check with your local bank about that program. That will be open to sole proprietors without employees, contractors, gig workers, and the like. It's already open to employees. It will be open to all businesses starting this Friday. So contact your local bank, because that's where the loan needs to originate from, as soon as possible as the funds are running out. The two local banks locally who will take any person, or there's one, Washington Federal on Orcas Island will take pre-applications from all businesses that come, including businesses that don't currently have a relationship with them. Islanders and Heritage both have, and KeyBank and Wells Fargo all have requirements for an existing relationship, a banking relationship. EDC programs wise, we're doing a twice weekly event called the Business Chat and Chew. It's a casual lunchtime event from noon to 12:45. Information for that is on our website in the news section. So this week, for example, Chris Reed talked a bit about the SBA programs yesterday. Deborah Hoskinson's employee Aaron will be talking on Thursday about that social media advice. So that's every Tuesday and Thursday, and you can just pop in, pop out, come and see and chat and eat lunch if you need to. This business recovery call will happen every Wednesday. So every Wednesday at 10, you can use that same Zoom link to attend, and we'll have different speakers every Wednesday. Some of them might be legislators or people running local programs. So keep your eyes on that. Also our Facebook page, which I mentioned, that's a great place to look for resources as we're updating it almost up to the minute. And then our website has a large resource page. If you go to our front page, sanjuansedc.org, you will see a link to our COVID resources. And if you do that sanjuansedc.org/news, that will get to all the information on the programs that we're currently running. And frankly, we're here to serve businesses. So with anything that you need, we will help you find a resource, or we'll help you ourselves. Another program that we're currently doing is the Islands Strong program. It's islandsstrong.com, and it is a gift card aggregator site for businesses that can sell gift cards digitally, or we can put a link to your website too. So be sure to go to that site, sign up for that if you've got a small business that has the ability to sell almost anything to people in the county who want to buy it. So that is it for EDC programs. But as I said, if you need anything, let us know. Just shoot us an email and we'll sort things out and help you find resources that you need. I'm going to hand the mic over to John Gomez from our staff, who is our currently local unemployment insurance expert. So he's going to tell you everything that has to do with all the changes for unemployment, both for employees and for owners of businesses, because that program is going to open up to owners of businesses very soon. So hit it, John.
Hey, good morning. So the big question that's still out in the air right now is timing on the $600 federal pandemic unemployment compensation supplement that was included in the CARES Act a week and a half ago. The date on when this money is going to start flowing to workers is still up in the air. Employment Security Department says their only guidance they're giving right now is mid-April. And that's both for when non-traditional workers like self-employed and independent contractors can also start applying, because by then the hope is that the system will be ready both to bring those workers into the system as well as start issuing those payments. The payments are supposed to be retroactive. There's been a lot of dates thrown around, but ESD and Department of Labor are still working on hearing out what the guidance is going to be on retroactive. We think it's going to be around April 1st, roughly, but don't quote me on that, because as we've seen in the last few weeks, all of this can change overnight. So ESD is, they're continuing the process, incoming claims. We'll get the latest unemployment numbers tomorrow from them. Last week, as you guys know, was it was a pretty massive jump. In the meantime, what do we do with workers? I'm just going to run through these real quickly. All of this is covered in extraordinary detail on their website, esd.wa.gov. Employees can be classified as standby, where they'll collect unemployment, but they don't have to look for work as long as they stay in contact with their employer and they don't turn down any work that doesn't break quarantine. So they could do telework, for example. It's either the employer or the employee requests standby from ESD. So just make sure you're coordinating with your employee. If you're doing that, which one of you is doing that? If you as the employer doing that, or if the employee is doing it. So that works either way. Right now, under the emergency rules, workers can get up to 12 weeks of standby. That was starting March 20th. And obviously at the end of this 12 weeks, they will revisit it if they need to. A lot of these are just stopgap things, until people figure out what's going to happen next. The same thing with the $600 payment. Those are for 8 weeks, and then at the end of that, the Treasury is going to take another look at that and see where, see if that has to extend or not. Employees can also be classified under shared work or partial employment. Under both of these, you can work part-time and collect unemployment to make up the balance in hours that you're not getting, and not necessarily the balance in wages, but it's one of those, they're both, they keep your employee, working for you part-time, and they can get some money from UI. That's always going to be in addition to the $600 pandemic payment once that starts to flow. Under shared work, you're going to cut hours instead of jobs. You say payroll and keep your workers while the workers get unemployment benefits for the reduced hours. And you can adjust these hours that they work week to week. The employer will coordinate this with an ESD, and you can request a relief of benefit charges in this instance. For partial employment, employers who need to keep operating on a less than full-time basis can request from ESD status known as partial for their employees, and the work search for while they're on unemployment is waived if they return to work at least for a week of full-time employment. Within 4 months, they have to work at least 16 hours a week. It's a little bit more sticky, so if you have questions about this, it's best to contact ESD, explain to them your circumstances, and see which of these would apply better for you. It might just be that standby works better than partial, but everybody's in a different situation right now, certainly from where they were a month ago. There's paid sick leave for up to 2 weeks, starting February 1st of this year. It's designed for employees who can't work for coronavirus-related reasons, such as governor's order to stay home. They can't get this if you're closed due to a lack of business, but they can get this if it's due to the health department restrictions. I'll throw up a link here. L&I has a lot more detail on virtually every scenario on their website, and I'll throw that into the chat box when I wrap this up. So that's options for employees. Options for employers. ESD has been, pushing sort of an overall guidance which helps with the shared work and the partial work, in that, you know, your business should be thinking about recovery. The biggest thing for a lot of businesses, small businesses, will just be sanitizing, letting people, you know, getting the work done of sanitizing counters, doors, any surfaces that customers and employees come into contact with. It's a head to toe operation, but it certainly can be done, you know, with existing resources, and if you're able to keep your workers going for a little bit. And then letting customers know on social media or on your website, or just, you know, hanging a sign on your door that, you know, when we reopen, this place has been cleaned top to bottom. They're requesting that employers file your quarterly tax report by April 30th, if possible. And you can request a penalty waiver in writing, but they need those to verify the claims that they're getting by the mountain load right now. So as you can imagine, if it's at all possible to get those quarterly tax reports in by the end of the month, that would be, that helps to move the machinery of this all along. Obviously, you might have reasons you can't, and ESD just, you know, as with everything, they just ask that you reach out to them through the employer line. Reimbursable employers who are normally required to pay 100% of benefit charges if you've reduced hours or shut down and follow public health recommendations, which is most of everybody. The federal government's going to pay 50% of the benefit charges, and more instructions will be coming on this from ESD. Workers at these organizations can also take advantage of the $600 a week pandemic compensation when that becomes available. ESD is working with businesses on relief for benefit charges, but you have to contact them on the employer line that's on their website. They're open Sunday through Saturday. They're open 7 days a week for employers to talk to. If you need to request benefit relief for benefit charges, they have to get it in writing no later than 30 days after you got the notice. But if you can't make the 30 days because of coronavirus related delays, then, you know, let them know and they can work it out with you. Again, all of this is, you know, them trying to get businesses through here. They're really trying to avoid, you know, gotcha situations, because people are, you know, having to deal with the situation that we have. You know, they asked us to make sure everybody knows about WorkSource when it gets closer, you know, when we start thinking about recovery. ESD is hiring, and you can get a lot, you know, you can stay as up to date as we do with them at this point by going to their homepage and signing up for email alerts. They haven't had any alerts lately because they're working on upgrading the system, but, you know, we keep pestering them to find out what's happening. And, you know, you're going to do all this, you know, all of these employee retention options that are available to you. You'll want to do this in concert with either your EIDL loan or your PPP loan, depending on, you know, where you net out on being able to receive those. And I think that's kind of it for unemployment. Do you guys have any questions? And I'll put that L&I link up after I wrap up.
Hi, John. This is Travis. Can you hear me?
Hey, Travis.
Hey, thanks a lot for all of you being here, and that really helpful information. The question I have, I think you already answered, but I figured it would be good for me just to verify. So I own Sole Corporation here on San Juan, and we've used shared work in the past in the financial crisis, and it worked out really nicely for us. And
right.
And I'm considering that now. So we're still open because a lot of our customers are critical infrastructure. But we are slowing down because there's a portion of our business or our customer base that are, of course, shutting down also. And
yeah.
So I'm looking at the shared work program again, and I'm trying to make sure I'm checking all the boxes. If we were to say cut out one day, I've gone on, you know, I figured out the weekly benefit amount for everybody based on the formula on the ESD site.
Right.
So my understanding is that the federal $600 benefit kicks in from like $1 of unemployment insurance. Is that right? And does that?
It's not. Well, no. That $600 is separate from unemployment insurance. So this is not something you're going to see a benefit charge on. This is. You have to just think of unemployment insurance as the mechanism for getting that payment out to workers on a weekly monthly basis.
Okay.
So it's going to be
I used the wrong.
it's going to be on top of whatever their award amount is.
Okay.
Or if they don't apply, or in the case of independent contractors and self-employed, and Chris, I might start misspeaking here, so let me know if I am. If they don't receive, because I've heard it both ways. I've heard that they could get them, that those people who haven't paid in unemployment could receive the minimum that the state allows plus the 600, and I've heard that all they would get is the 600. So until we see it in action, I'm not sure which way that's going to go, but at the very least it'll be $600 a week for 8 weeks.
Okay, and so shared work, I can think of that if we wanted shared work and my employees and possibly me, but I'm worried more about the employees. If they get $1, I said unemployment insurance, but I misspoke. If they get $1 of unemployment benefits,
Right.
then they get the full 600 regardless if they're part-time or full-time or.
That's what we're understanding now until we see it roll out. And like we saw with the EIDL loans, the EIDL grant advance thing, this is changing. We haven't seen anything to suggest it's going to be a proportionate amount.
Okay.
All we've read so far is that it's going to be $600 a week. And there was a big controversy about, well, what if people are now making more money on unemployment plus the 600 than they would have.
Yep.
But that kind of got shot down in the overall, greater good conversation. So far,
Yeah. Thank you very much for the clarification and the info.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'll be here for the rest of the call if you guys want to chat me directly.
Thanks, John. And as I said, if you have questions, you can email us at info@sanjuansedc.org, and we can get your question to any of the resources that we have available to us. I'm going to bring Chris Reed, our local SCORE counselor, into the conversation, and he's going to do a quick rundown of the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, and the EIDL, the EIDL, and EEIG grants, which is a lot of acronyms, but I'll let Chris explain what they mean. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Victoria. Well, I think you really shared the headlines, if you will, for the news this morning. We heard at 8 a.m. this morning from the district SBA manager who just got off the national call that these EIDL and EEIG $10,000 disaster grants will be restricted to $1,000 per employee. Now, when you submitted the grant application, it asks how many employees you have near the end. That's likely what they'll be using. Formal written notification of this new rule and how it's implemented is expected later on today, so keep an eye out for that. The plus side of that is at least when that's out, probably the floodgates of funding will start happening quickly. I've not heard of anyone actually getting these grants yet, probably because they're working through this issue. But anyway, so that's an important one. Now, as I'll talk about in a second, there's a real uncertainty about what's the definition of an employee for the different programs, and it appears that they're probably different. The EIDL provides no guidance on the application itself for what is an employee. Is an employee just a full-time worker? Is an employee the total number of full-time and part-time workers you paid during the month or quarter? Or is a full-time, or is an employee a FTE or full-time equivalent, which normalizes the amount of hours that part-time and full-time workers perform for the business. As far as I can tell, the EIDL will accept any of those definitions, of which obviously the total number of part and full-time employees is the largest. Again, that'll probably be documented in the formal rule. But watch for that. They may also, obviously this was not documented earlier. I'm not sure if they'll document if you have ability to update the employee count you put in that application or not. Again, we have to wait till we see the actual rule. I think most people know now that we've got some pretty clear clarification about who's eligible for the EIDL loan, and it's pretty broad-based. So obviously small businesses, any nonprofit that's in the 503C, D, or E categories of the tax code, faith-based organizations, and now farms. So it's pretty exhaustive. There's very few people who aren't able to apply for the EIDL loan and grant. One thing I'm asking overall is, as people get formal feedback that their loans have been accepted by the SBA and have received funding, just to share that among our community, so we just can set expectations of when these monies are flowing. Okay, so that's the quick update on the EIDL. On the PPP, the local banks only received guidance of how the loan process works on Monday. They scrambled them to implement processes to accept the loans. Those processes are pretty buggy. We're hearing reports for some banks that the people are being bounced out of the formal application process. Other banks, I've applied for 2 of them myself, for a nonprofit and for a corporation, and one of the banks has what appears to be a smooth process, but when you go in and it does the form, the actual field validation, it asks for nonsensical stuff. So you just have to be muscle through and do the best thing you have. And what makes it more stressful is that the banks are saying they're trying to automate this process as much as possible, and that if you don't provide them exactly what they need, especially in the form of the payroll amounts required for calculation of the PPP, you'll be bounced out into probably some nether world where who knows when you're going to be handled. So the really key documents are, and they'll say what they are when you get to the detailed application, but the Form 9, the quarterly federal tax return, the Form 941 is a really critical doc for most businesses. Smaller businesses will be able to submit other payroll documentation, but it'll probably be required to be a third-party source, such as what you're paying paychecks or ADP or whatever. And they'll document what they're accepting in terms of that kind of third-party validation. Now this becomes especially important when they talk about employees for the PPP form. At least the form that I completed was explicit that they wanted you to report the number of full-time equivalent employees you had pre-disaster. And that then becomes the base in a second for how much of the PPP you can get. So example, one business I'm involved in has 1 full-time employee, 8 part-time employees. If you add up the total hours of the full-time and part-time employees, it adds up to roughly 190 hours a month. Divide that by 173.3 hours, which is the average number of working hours in a month, you get a number of 1.62 in this particular case. That's the FTE for that business. Now that number then will be used as a reference to determine how much of the total forgiveness amount that you're assigned, you're actually eligible for. So if this business were to reduce headcount on payroll to 0.8 full-time equivalents, you'd only have access to 1/2 of the potential forgiveness on the PPP loan that you have. So are we confused yet? So there's lots of details on this. There is a detailed 31-page SBA policy document which documents some of these equations that if you're looking to use the PPP, I encourage you read. And then of course there's the interaction with what's happening with unemployment insurance as well. So I know in my own business I'm involved in, I'm waiting to see what's happening with the unemployment insurance policy for contractors and self-employed. Then going to sit down with the PPP program and decide what's the right path to take. I think both programs have retroactivity terms so that you can make that decision and then apply it backward toward the beginning of the month. So plenty to keep you occupied. And then my final advice I'm giving I've talked to about, I think I'm up to 33 local businesses and providing one-on-one mentoring to. And I close every call by encouraging them not to get sucked into this chaos and uncertainty of these government programs. That if they're spending more than 10% of their time focusing on this versus getting their business position to survive even if government support doesn't happen. And as we see, as the rules are changing, you know, many businesses I've talked to just saw their potential emergency grant drop by 90%. So other things could happen with PPP and other things. So if you can position your business to survive without any government support, you're putting your destiny in your own hands, and then spend 90% of your time focused on how to prosper and thrive and get your business to the next level when the constraints come off. You know, upgrade your online marketing, develop new skills, new products, you know, line up your customers so you're efficient in delivering services as soon as you're able to. So make sure you're focused, not swirling around all this chaos of the government programs. Make sure you're focused on how do you recover quickly out the other end, because that's what's really important in the long run. So that's my quick update.
Fantastic, Chris, thank you. We've got a question from Kristen Felso, who's the director of the Animal Protection Society. She wants to know, she was under the impression that applying for a PPP loan was the best move versus an EIDL, but I'm guessing you'll tell her to do both.
I'll tell you to do both. You're eligible for both. Well, let's see, assuming you're a 501c3, you are eligible for both. Now, if you get money for the grant under the the EEIG grant under the EIDL application, then any of those dollars you get for that, which are supposed to be spent on payroll, will be deducted from any forgiveness amount for the PPP loan, which is only makes sense because you don't want to be double dipping. But there's an advantage for the PPP loan in that for every $10 you get for forgiveness eligibility on the PPP, on payroll eligibility for PPP, you get another potential $3.33 that can be applied to other eligible expenses such as rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And so you get a bit of a kicker there to take the PPP, get people back on payroll versus unemployment. But again, there are lots of tricky details, so you need to really study the rules to make sure you're following them closely.
We've got, thank you, Chris. Kristen, we've got on our website the video from yesterday, the lenders info session that we did that had Brad Williamson from Islanders Bank and Laura Sandstrom from Heritage Bank talking about the program for the PPP. For the EIDL loan, be sure when you're applying for that to click the box that says you'd like to be considered for an advance, because that is the trigger for being considered for an EEIG, the Economic Emergency Injury Grant. Is that what it is, Chris? Okay, thanks. So did that answer your question, Kristen? I guess you can't talk. Let me unmute you. Kristen, did that answer everything?
It did. I just wondering, I am just about to hit the button on the application right now for the PPP. Will it be a problem that we applied for that before the EIDL?
I've not heard of any reason to think it would be a problem.
Okay.
They're processed by through entirely different processes, and they're just assuming they're going to be reconnected sometime in the next 2 months. The EIDL is through the Small Business Administration. The PPP is through the local banks. They're going to have some coordination process around grant amounts, but that's a month or two away.
Great. Thanks so much, both of you, Victoria and Chris.
Absolutely. Do we have any other questions from anybody for any of our speakers today? Oops, let me unmute all if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. Okay, everybody's unmuted if you want to be, so you can just click your unmute button and ask questions if you have any, or make comments or anything you need to do. Okay, well, hearing no questions.
I'm kind of confused now because everything's changing so quickly.
It is.
What I most, for my business, I have many employees, but our season is coming up. Everybody's pretty much laid off during the winter. And we've already had a bunch of jobs put on hold and canceled. One job that is coming up, and so I'm really concerned about my employees, and that's my biggest concern is my employees and making sure that they receive some funding somehow. So I'm going to have to look more, I think, with the unemployment stuff. And as far as the PPP is concerned, if we're doing that ratio, I don't have any full-time employees except for in the summer. So it's really tricky. And one of the jobs that's coming up soon is a prevailing wage job. And so as time is going on, I have to do certified payroll. And so my balance is getting smaller for that, to be able to pay those wages in advance before I ever get reimbursed. And it's since it's prevailing wage, it's really high wages. And so I'm more concerned about making sure that the monies are there to pay the employees more than I am running. My business is going to be fine as it is right now. I'm just getting more confused by the day.
One thing I would say is that I think like the circumstance you identified sort of increases risk about how the program will, like the PPP program will consider your wage base. But you've got, again, basically I think 3 different pathways to get help here. One is giving your employees access to the through supporting them and getting unemployment insurance. 2 is the PPP, and 3 as a stopgap is that if neither of those work, there is a 50% federal refundable tax credit up to for the first $10,000 of compensation per employee you can access, but of course you wouldn't get that till you file next year's taxes. So it's kind of figuring out which of those 3 really work. In your situation around the wage base, you need to look at the detailed PPP program guidance. You can determine, you have a choice about what your wage base is. I think it's either all of last year or January, February of this year. And so that might give you some latitude around how do you can have better confidence about what your eligibility number will be. It's not easy.
Yeah, especially because January, February is basically zilch.
Yeah.
And every year it's different. Like this year, I'm going to be having supposedly a lot more work than my very first year where there was some income. So it's just so variable with my business. It's really becoming really overwhelming. So I'm just going to do the best I can. I just want to support the employees. Really, that's my goal.
Hey, Vicki,
Yeah.
did your bank give you a calculator to go with the PPP?
I haven't started the PPE yet because I was just getting ready. I have all my 941s printed out and all that. So I'm gathering all that documentation, but I haven't talked to Heritage Bank yet.
Okay, well, Heritage is actually the one that has this pretty amazing calculator that they're using. And if you plug in the various numbers, if you plug in the FTEs, you can really see how it might impact you positively or negatively, depending upon whom you hired last year versus who you would hire this year or who you currently have online. So that's something you can look at to make sure that, like whatever you hire doesn't impact you negatively against the PPP. So when you get that thing from them, you'll see it's pretty obvious right in there.
Okay, so I can do some pre-estimates before I actually click a button to find out if it's even worth it.
Well, it's worth it just to reach to your lender and get that spreadsheet because it's pretty snazzy. It's nice and pretty clear, and you can plug in things and decide from that.
Okay.
Machine.
And I just wanted to offer that the spreadsheet that Victoria just mentioned, Vicki, that was asking for 12 months, as Chris said, it was asking for 12 months of compensation, and it lists out, there's a tab in that spreadsheet that has some pretty good definitions and descriptions of what you can include in there. And so if you have a seasonal business, you should be able to use your 12 months from last year, even though you're saying that might not be great for looking ahead if you're busier. But I would say, I'm not sure where you're at in the process, but I was getting my information. I wanted to get in line before having all my information together because I knew the application was going to come later. So I think we've heard in a lot of cases like speed is of the essence to get your place in line.
Okay, I'll do that right after the meeting. Thank you.
Well, and Vicki, according to the federal people that talk to, they really want to get this money into people's pockets. I mean, it is a finite amount of money, but they don't even care if the people are working. They just want people to be able to spend money to keep the economy afloat.
Okay.
Not that you have to instantly hire everybody to do the work. You're keeping them on the books.
Yeah, and maybe after the meeting, John, I would like to maybe just have you go over the unemployment and how I can be the employer to support that. I don't understand the unemployment part, so maybe we can have a private conversation after the meeting.
That's fine. Yeah, and I sorry, while we were doing that, I just threw that heritage calculator into
Thanks, John.
into the chat here, just so you know, you don't have to jump through hoops to get it. So if you can go on the chat, you'll see a link. I just threw it in my Dropbox so you can grab it. It's just an Excel spreadsheet.
I see. Okay, great.
Nothing crazy. So.
All right. Thank you, John.
Sure.
So any other questions? If you do have questions later, just send us an email, info@sanjuansedc.org, and we can get it to the people from this call or other resources that we have available to us. And as always, I want to say thank you for everything that you are doing in your own business to try and get through this. This is unprecedented and horrible. And as Chris says, embrace the suck, because it's not easy. No, it's not easy right now for you. So just let us know if there's something that we can do. Thank you for joining the call today, and I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting.